Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and get our council meeting started for Layton City, dated March 7th at 7 p.m., actually 7:01. As I've mentioned in the past, we each take a turn in leading the meeting.
Mayor,
And,
did you say March?
Yeah, I did say March. I meant May.
May. Thanks.
Yeah. Maybe I want to relive it. Not. No, thank you. So yes, for May 7th, 2020. So if I could have the audience rise with me and we'll say our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And with that, I have invited Deacon Manuel Trujillo from St. Rosa Lima to give us a prayer here. And I thought it was just appropriate, knowing that we are still in our centennial year, and you know that's an institution that's been around for a long time, and we appreciate Manuel, because he's been a longtime citizen of Layton as well. So, Mr. Trujillo.
I got to remove my mask because then I can't see with my glasses. So my brothers and sisters, let us begin. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this wonderful opportunity that you have given us to come together in your most glorious and holy name. I thank you, Lord. I thank you, Lord, in behalf of everybody gathered here today. Thank you for the call to serve you by serving your people. Give these council members even a fraction of your wisdom, that they may serve you and serve your people equally without exceptions, as they are called to do so by you, precious Lord. Therefore, I pray for our Mayor, Joy Petro. I pray also for all the various levels of city officials, and in particular, for this assembled council. I ask that you may prepare them to serve this community with integrity, honesty, kindness, gentleness, and love. Bless each member of this council with wisdom to govern amidst conflicting interests and issues of our time. A sense of the welfare and true needs of our people, a keen thirst for justice and righteousness. Give them confidence in what is good and fitting for the common good of humanity. Grant them the ability to work together in harmony, even when there is honest disagreements. Grant them personal peace in their lives and joy in their tasks. Give them the gift to see your presence in all of our brothers and sisters, no matter what color, race, or religion. I pray for the agenda set before them today. Please give them the assurance of what will please you and what would be benefit to those who live and work in and around our beautiful and beloved city of Layton. We ask this in your most glorious and holy name, Lord Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Wow. Thank you so much. That was, we really appreciate those kind words. Okay, with that, council, we'll go on to our, we've got a set of minutes that we're going to need to approve. So with that, I'll look for a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes of Layton City Council meeting dated April 2nd, 2020, and minutes of Layton City Council meeting April 16th, 2020.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate that. We'll move on next to our municipal events. And unfortunately, I think it's been like the last few meetings. Oh, excuse me. Before we do that, before we go on to our municipal events, sorry, I'm still worked up over that kind prayer. I really appreciate that, Deacon Trujillo. That was special. Okay, a motion's been made and a second on our minutes. Let's have a vote there. Seeing that we're all here, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, there we go. Now I can go on to my municipal events, which unfortunately I don't think we have any at this time. I'd just say, go ahead. Did you have something, a comment?
Well, yeah, just a comment to thank the city for putting the 2020 graduating class from both high schools out on the LED boards. It has meant a lot. I've had several comments from the graduating seniors, how much they've appreciated that the city has stepped up and recognized them.
That's one thing I was going to mention, and thank goodness, just so everyone knows, that those names will continue to scroll on those boards through May 26th, I believe, which is the graduation day for both Northridge and Layton High. So again, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Okay. This now brings us to the point of our meeting where there is citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens that would like to make a comment here? Gary, I'm going to call on you to see if there's been any that's come through our online as well.
There's only one, but I think that this is more oriented towards a question to Parks and Recreation regarding the rental of the amphitheater for an Irish dance company. So I'll send that on to Dave Price and get an answer. I think...
Is it a question that perhaps the rest of the citizens, though, would want to know? If it's, I think it might be beneficial, because I believe a couple of folks have had that same question.
It's just a simple question. It says, can the Layton Amphitheater be available for rent? It's from Christy Doherty. And I don't have an address, but her phone number, I have a phone number, and I can get that to... Oh, okay. I'm not going to give it over the...
Yeah,
Right.
no, that's fine.
But anyway, she just wanted to know whether or not it was rentable for her dance school. They had a concert scheduled before the COVID-19 struck, and wanted to know that the amphitheater's big enough that they could probably accommodate the group with the separation requirements that the health department has suggested. And so she wanted to know if the amphitheater would be available for those practices and for perhaps even a performance in the future. And so I'm not sure that we've looked at that. I think it's probably a ways down the road.
I was going to say, based on timing, that is kind of one of the things that we're concerned about there,
I
as
think
well
that would
as...
be right.
Yeah, so, in addition to just not the amphitheater, but I know that we've had the question regarding the pavilions or any of the parks there, so, again, that's, it's not, correct me if I'm wrong, but Mr. Price, since you're here, I believe that we are not taking any reservations for those facilities, and so, and I don't think we will, but go ahead, Mr. Price, you can address both these questions for us.
No, that's exactly right. For both the pavilions and the amphitheater right now, we are not taking reservations because of the limit of 20 people in an area like that. As we move towards the yellow phase of our recovery, then we will begin to look to bringing that question back to you, the council. We think that in the yellow phase, we can support some small activities in those areas.
I believe in the yellow phase, it's a gathering of 50 or less.
Yes.
So just so folks know that that's really the numbers that we're going to have to kind of gauge the rental usage of, and again, social distancing and practicing.
And so, like all of us, we're watching closely to see how quickly that transaction happens.
Along with those
Transition.
comments. Okay.
I
Thank
just
you.
have a question. Do you have somebody named Jay that works for you?
And Jay Clark, he's our.
Yeah, so Gary, she had actually called and talked to me, and I had her submit through the thing. He actually told her to ask the council, and that's the reason why it came through that way. She's also spoke with somebody at the health department that's willing to give them guidance, and I think this individual may have helped her draft that plan that was in the email that she sent, so I told her I would call her tomorrow, so I will just tell her we're still not taking any reservations and we're on hold, correct?
Yeah, and
Best advice?
we did receive her email late this afternoon. I'll be responding to her personally.
Okay, great.
Probably tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. Mr. Price. So we're good? Okay. Quick, let me check with Carson. Carson, has there been anything else on the ones that you're following to see if there's any other citizens' comments? Okay, hold on, if you want to just, if you can, since you're representing the citizens, do you mind coming up to the mic and just speaking into that?
JT Caspa asked, what is being done with funds from canceled activities? And then the second question from Tony Benzina is, are we allowed to tell them how many people had contracted corona if we had that data?
Okay. First question, what was it again? Sorry.
What was being done with funds from
Oh.
canceled activities?
Okay, I'll have Mr. Price answer that one. As far as Mr. Benzini's question, basically, the health department, whatever the health department puts out is the only thing that we can allow right now to share with citizens, mainly because of the HIPAA laws. So we can't be very specific. In fact, it doesn't even break it down by city, but it is by county. So, we just got to
There is a city number.
Well, that's right, yeah.
And that's all, and it includes South Weber. So all we can tell that individual is on the Utah coronavirus site or on the Davis County site, there's a place to do what's called a small city. And you can click on the map and bring up our small city, which is Layton, South Weber, and it will give the count. They obviously, for HIPAA reasons, cannot give any more detailed information regarding that, but we do have a number, and the last time I looked, we were in the 50s.
It is 63 today.
63, so.
Okay.
So concerning the special events, the big three that we've talked about in the past, most of our operating funds for the 4th of July and these events are produced through the vendors that come and rent a space at the 4th of July. That's where a majority of our operation money comes from. The amount that the city puts in is small in comparison. The other big expense, the fireworks, we're working with the fireworks provider to extend that to next year. And so that money or that contract will be extended so that they can do that same shoot in a year.
Okay. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Any other comments here? Seeing that there's none, we'll go ahead and move on to our consent items. And to keep in mind that the consent items, there's several of them tonight, and they're considered routine in nature and can be enacted upon by a single motion. And if there's discussion desired on any particular item, certainly we can remove it from the agenda item and vote on it separately. But with that, I believe we'll just go ahead and start out with item number A, and that will be presented by our city attorney, Gary Crane.
Thank you. And I just had Chad load a slide for you so that you could see where this property was located. So every once in a while, especially in the east side of Layton, we find an easement that has been granted to the city or something that has been granted to the city that where development actually did not end up in occurring, and that's what happened here. We have a small 10-foot strip that was going to provide for and accommodate utilities, and it actually was never used or has never been used. Where is this? Let's see here. Right there in the subdivision. So it's on the east bench. The property to the north is going to be developed into a subdivision, and a very small subdivision. And this little strip of property at some time in the past was conveyed to the city for the purpose of taking utilities back. So what we've done here is we're going to convey this, what they call insignificant parcel of property, and that has a legal term which allows us to convey a parcel that is insignificant, that nothing can be built on, that can't be zoned and produce any development at all, to somebody, back to somebody, to the owner of the property who actually dedicated it to us. And so that's what we're doing here is we're going ahead and conveying it back to the owner who actually dedicated the property to us. And then as the owner develops a subdivision, the owner will actually, by plat, dedicate a utility easement to us. We don't own our utility easements. We really don't want to own most of those. Any place where we want utilities are normally in the road. If we do it on private property, we just want an easement over that property, what's called a public utility easement over that property for the location of utilities. And so that's what's happening here is just an old piece of property, strip of property that was there for the purpose of utilities that never materialized, is now being given back to the owner, and the owner will dedicate by plat to us a utility easement over that as our engineer determines is necessary. Any questions on that one?
Council?
Thank you.
Okay, no questions? Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to item B, which will be presented by Mr. Dave Price. It's our license agreement between Layton City and Mr. Robert Parrish.
Mayor and Council, this evening I have the opportunity to introduce Resolution 2037. This is extremely similar to the one that we did a month ago for Tammy Boyson. In fact, Mr. Parrish, the property owner we're talking about, is directly on the other side of this trail. So this is the property that we're talking about in the picture. This is the Case Creek Trail, and right down this line right here is the easement that we'll be speaking about. And so this resolution provides for a license agreement, the conveyance of an insignificant parcel of property, and an easement agreement. This property was acquired from IHC Health Services in 2019 and 2020. Layton City accepted ownership of this property to maintain, operate, repair, inspect, protect, install, remove, and replace the Case Creek Trail, culvert, and natural environments. Robert Parrish is the abutting property owner to the west of the property. He has expressed the desire to acquire the use of this property through a license. He understands that no structures can be placed on this property and that any improvements will become the property of the city at the termination of the license. Layton City will reserve all rights to ownership in perpetuity, and Layton City and Robert Parrish may terminate this agreement at any time for any reason. As you can see in this drawing, Mr. Parrish's property is the one on the west side of the trail, and the property that we're conveying is this small section right here next to the creek. As the city conveys that property to Mr. Parrish, we will also keep an easement over it to allow us access to take care of the creek and the structures that support the Case Creek. Staff recommends the council adopt Resolution 2037. Any questions?
I have one, and I actually thought about it after our last one. So these agreements are with those individuals, or are they with that property owner? So if something happens to Mr. Parrish, he either passes away or sells the property, does this transfer to the new owners, or it reverts back to the city?
The use agreement, or the license, is for Mr. Parrish, and it's until he sells the property or until he passes away.
Okay.
The easement retains with the property.
There are two names on this one. There's him and then Madeline. There's two different names on this one, so should one or the other, because
Him
his
or
wife
his
goes by,
wife, yeah.
So there's him and his wife. They're two different names, just so you know, but they both apply to the same property. Okay. Any other questions? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Price. Okay, next up, we have Terry Colburn, our Public Works Director, and this will be on a cooperative agreement between the UDOT and the storm drain improvement for Highway 89. Actually, I think you might be up here for a while.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That's why I took my mask off. That's too much hot air to survive. And Kim also gave me her blessing that it was okay for me to take it off next to her. I didn't care about Councilman Day. In the early meeting, City Engineer Steve Jackson explained each of these items to you in detail. I am here tonight for the official acceptance and approval from the City Council. First item is a maintenance and ownership cooperative agreement between Utah Department of Transportation and Layton City, establishing the maintenance and ownership of storm drain improvements as part of the highway project, identified, as we all know, as Highway 89. UDOT's project construction necessitates constructing, relocating, adjusting, or protecting a portion of the city's storm drain facilities in relation to the project. The maintenance and ownership cooperative agreement between UDOT and the city details the specifics of the drainage improvements, ownership, and maintenance that each party will retain, and staff would recommend the council adopt Resolution 2031.
Council, do you have any questions regarding this item? Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Item number 2, Resolution 2032, a memorandum of agreement between Layton City, the United States Army Corps of Engineers, Sacramento District, the Utah State Historic Preservation Officer, and Utah Department of Transportation regarding the US 89 from Shepherd Lane to I-84 project. The United States Army Corps of Engineers, Sacramento District, proposes to issue a permit for constructing and relocating improvements regarding the US 89 from Shepherd Lane to I-84 project, Davis County, Utah. To the Utah Department of Transportation have also consulted the Utah State Historic Preservation Officer, known as SHPO, regarding area of potential effects herein, APE, and historic properties within the APE, and have determined that the Civilian Conservation Corps stone flood control walls remain eligible for inclusion on the National Register of Historic Places. A portion of the historic walls are within Layton City. The USAC, UDOT, SHPO, and the city agree that the undertaking, including the historic stone flood control walls, shall be implemented in accordance with the stipulations outlined in the MOA. The city signed an MOA in February 2018 and an amended MOA in August of 2019 with UDOT and SHPO regarding these historic walls. This MOA is restating the previous MOAs for the USAC, and staff would recommend the council adopt Resolution 2032.
Okay, council, do you have any questions regarding item D? Okay, seeing none?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bring before you, council, the City Council Resolution 2033, a third-party relocation agreement between Utah Department of Transportation and Layton City for the relocation of sewer facilities in the Oak Hills Drive and Gordon Avenue areas within the scope of the highway construction project identified as US 89. The third-party relocation agreement between UDOT and the city details the specifics of the relocation of the sewer facilities in the Oak Hills Drive and Gordon Avenue area. The city will retain ownership of the relocated sewer facilities once the project has been completed. Staff would recommend the council adopt Resolution 2033.
Any questions? Okay, another
Thank you.
drink. You can proceed
Bring
to
before
item
the
F.
council Resolution 2034, a third-party reimbursement agreement between Utah Department of Transportation and Layton City for the reimbursement of water facilities in the Oak Hills Drive and Gordon Avenue area within the scope of the US 89 project. Utah Department of Transportation is engaged in constructing the highway construction project identified as US 89 from Farmington to I-84 in Davis and Weber Counties, Utah. UDOT will be awarding a contract for the project, and the design-build contractor will design and administer construction of the project. Layton City owns and maintains existing water facilities within the roadways at various locations within the scope of the project. UDOT's project construction necessitates relocating, adjusting, betterment, or protecting a portion of the city's water facilities in relation to this project. The city has requested betterment to the water system consisting of the installation of a 12-inch water line identified as solutions S2046 and S2043 in this agreement. The cost to the city for the betterment is $778,751.49. Staff would recommend the council adopt Resolution 2034.
Okay. Any questions?
Just a quick question, Terry. The reimbursement amount, is that, so UDOT's going to be awarding a contract. Is that a preliminary figure, the 778, estimated from what the contract will be?
That's a figure generated from our
your
known costs of what it would do. And so they're going to do it, their contractor will do it while the project's going on, and then we'll reimburse them for what they call a betterment in the project.
My second question, does the city have any say in that process of awarding that contract, the bid process for UDOT?
No.
So if we,
But I will tell you that we've already started working with two contractors up there that have been relocating utilities up on 89, and they've both been really good contractors to work with. So we don't anticipate a problem with them. They're probably tougher to get a job with than we are.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Hey, one more item to go.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bring before the council Resolution 2036, letter of an agreement between Layton City and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints regarding the installation of improvements, approximately 1400 East Oak Hills Drive. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is installing street, curb, and gutter, storm drain, and conduit improvements as part of the construction of the Layton Temple. The city wants to install improvements in the intersection of Oak Hills Drive and Gentile Street, as well as sidewalk improvements on Rosewood Lane at 99 North and 77 North. The city and the church agree that it is in the best interests of both parties to exchange certain improvements to promote the efficient use of resources and public funds. The city will complete certain church improvements in or near the intersection of Oak Hills and Gentile Street, as outlined in Exhibit A. The church will complete certain city improvements along Rosewood Lane, as outlined in Exhibit B. Both parties will create invoices of their respective improvements and submit it to the other parties. Any difference between the invoice amounts shall be paid in a timely manner to the appropriate party. Staff recommends the council adopt Resolution 2036.
Any questions, council? Okay, seeing
Thank
that
you.
there's none, thank you very much. I appreciate you presenting all those items to us. And we'll move on to our last consent item, which is H, and will be presented by Tracy Colbert.
Mayor, members of the council, I bring to you tonight Resolution 20-30 to adopt the tentative budget for fiscal year 2020-2021 and to set a public hearing. In previous discussions which we had during the work meeting, you've indicated that you would like to move that public hearing to June 4th, which would be the first meeting in June, and that we would then plan to adopt the budget on June 18th, or if that date changes, then we could discuss that on June 4th during the public hearing. I don't believe there are any questions regarding the tentative budget. For the record, I will indicate that we've had several meetings. The budget process began in December, and at this point, the budget, as it will be presented and as it will be online for the citizens of the community to review, has not been adjusted based on any types of effects of the coronavirus or anything like that. We do, and we did discuss in the prior meeting, that we will have at least one additional meeting, possibly two, to discuss any changes. We'll start to receive information next week as far as sales tax, that we can preliminarily, start to judge what types of adjustments we may want to make prior to the final adoption. So I just say that so that if members of the community go out and start to review the budget, they won't notice that any changes have been made at this point. But that budget will be available online, I believe, beginning Monday, so that if community members wanted to review it, they could, and also for your continued review. If there aren't any questions, staff recommends the council adopt Resolution 20-30 approving the tentative budget and setting a public hearing for June 4th, 2020 at 7 p.m. here in the council chambers.
Okay, that's a call for questions.
Yeah, I don't really have questions, but Gary, can we make a comment that's not, okay. I just want to, first of all, thank you for putting up with us, learning this process.
Okay.
This has not been easy. But I just want to reiterate for the public that might be watching that, and I think I can speak probably for the majority of the members that sit up here, that we know the unknowns going into this. Adopting this, if that's what we choose to do tonight, is we know it's a fluid document. We know we don't have any of the answers, and that we will be reviewing this and making changes as the economy dictates, as the numbers dictate. And I want them to feel comfortable that we're not just blindly going into this, that between us and staff, this has been very well thought out. And again, I appreciate you for all your time and listening to our questions and stuff.
Very well said. Okay. Council, that brings our consent items to a close. So as stated earlier, we can entertain a motion on the items that have been presented. Whoever makes that motion, if you wouldn't mind, for our recorder's sake, if you could just mention the resolution number as well as you read those items. So Whoever feels long-winded, I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, well, okay, I'll do it. Madam Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the consent items as follows. Item A, Resolution 2027, conveyance of an insignificant parcel of land. B, Resolution 2037, a license agreement between Layton City and Robert Parish. C, Resolution 2031, various location of cooperative agreement between UDOT and Layton City for storm drain. D, Resolution 2032, memorandum of agreement between Layton City, the United States Army Corps of Engineers, Sacramento District, the Utah State Historic Preservation Officer, and UDOT regarding some historical walls. Resolution 2033, a third-party relocation agreement between UDOT and the city for relocation of sewer facilities. Resolution 2034, third-party agreement between UDOT and Layton City for the reimbursement of water facilities. G, the letter of agreement, Resolution 2036, a letter of agreement between Layton City and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints regarding some installment improvements. And H, to adopt a tentative budget for fiscal year 2020 to 21, Resolution 2030, with a change to setting our public hearing for June 4th, 2020.
Wow, perfect. Your second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. All those in favor of the consent items as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay, we'll move on now to our public hearing. And the first item that, our first item for the public hearing will be an amendment to our budget for 2019-2020. And again, Tracy Probert will present that to us.
Mayor, members of the council, I bring to you tonight ordinance 20-707, amending the budget for 2019-2020 fiscal year. In your packet, you received a summary and also some details regarding those amendments, and maybe just a bit of a background. Throughout the year, any budget year, there are things that change, things that happen, monies that we didn't anticipate, activities that were not initially planned for which monies were received and costs were incurred. And so this series of amendments that are presented get us up to date from July 1 of 2019 until within the last couple of weeks as far as amendments are concerned. We'll then bring to you on June 18th final amendments for the 2019-2020 budget, and we'll prepare them in a similar manner and review them in a work meeting and so forth. The public hearing was advertised for this evening, May 7th, to take public comment regarding any of these amendments if the citizens felt that they needed to do so. As far as overview, we discussed some of these in the work meeting, but we did, during this time period mentioned, appropriate an additional $462,162.26 out of general fund balance, and the majority of that went to three major areas: our fire breathing apparatus, what they call SCBA equipment, for when they enter a building they have to have the breathing equipment, purchase of property on West Gentile for a future intersection, and improvements of Bayview parking lot. We also had $80,000 and some dollars in revenues that were received from police and fire special services, rental of equipment, class fees, insurance reimbursements, donations, things like that, and $51,402.93 in grant revenue that wasn't anticipated at the beginning of the year that we've recognized and appropriated to the appropriate line items of expenditure, mostly overtime and supplies. In our other funds, that takes care of the general fund for a total of $602,043.41 in amendments to that budget. Some of the others that were in our other funds, our impact fee fund, use of transportation impact fees for improvements in East Gentile and the Oak Hills intersection, which was previously discussed during the consent items. There's also grant monies received for COVID-19 relief that will be discussed after this presentation, and also a public hearing related to CDBG funds. And the other major areas that I've discussed go into the capital projects fund, which was purchase of the breathing apparatus equipment for the fire department, improvements on, or signals on Gordon Avenue, Fairfield, and Church Street, and appropriation of funds for the Oak Hills East Gentile intersection. The last one that was of significant size would be a box culvert on Kays Creek and Weaver Lane that has participation from Davis County. Those would be the amendments for the current year budget, ending June 30th, 2020, up to date. Are there any questions?
This is a public hearing, so I want to open it up. So, council, if you do have any questions, and this is also our opportunity for us to discuss it. So, go ahead.
Can you explain the Prop 1, where it's the $33,000 transfer from remaining funding from the 2200 West Rail Crossing? So was that a previous project that was done that had excess money in it, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion here? Okay, being that this is a public hearing, I also want to call upon anybody that should be in the audience at this time, or I also want to check in with our city attorney, Gary Crane, and also Carson, who's been watching the social media aspects and the online, to see if we've had any comments there as well. So, Gary has none. Carson, do you have any comments regarding the just the public hearing of the budget for fiscal year 2019? None? Okay. Okay. Well, being that there's no comments on that, council, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing and adopt ordinance 2007. Today.
The big one, so you guys, it's your turn.
Somebody else step up.
Madam Mayor, I move that we first close the public hearing and amend the budget for fiscal year 2019-2020 by adopting ordinance 2007 as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Being that this is a public hearing, we'll need to do a roll call vote. So with that, I'll start with Councilman Thomas over there.
Yes.
Okay, Councilman Morse,
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Councilman Bloxham,
Aye.
Councilman Day.
Yes.
Okay, that's unanimous, so we'll, thank you. We'll now move on to item B, which will be presented by Morgan Cloward. So I'll need to, I guess I should have a motion, to open this. Or can I have one public, we opened the public hearing, so is that good for all three of them? Okay, okay. All right, so we're still in our public hearing mode, and so we'll have Morgan Cloward present to us regarding the community block grant, the block grant amendment, annual action plan.
Mayor, while they're getting ready to pull that up, the reason to leave the public hearing open probably is because of the public comment that's coming in slowly, perhaps through, and so at the very end of all the public hearings, just go ahead and close.
Okay,
The
so we can
public
leave them
hearing,
all
so if
open,
you-
go through all three of them?
If you get additional
Okay.
comments, then
Now
you'd have to
that's-
open the hearing to take those comments, and so it just makes sense to leave the whole thing open until the end.
So
Well, I
didn't we
closed
close
it.
the previous public hearing?
I don't think so. Did you?
I did.
Yeah,
you
Yeah, it was
did.
the first thing
Yeah.
I said. So I
Okay,
We did close the first one, but,
you'll need to open it again on that issue if somebody wants to talk about the budget, but I'd leave it open till the end and just make one motion to close it at the end. Sorry, I didn't catch that, so, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Gary, for that clarification there. Oh, no, only if there's comments that come through. And we can reopen it.
So, Gary, right, do we need to reopen the public hearing right now?
I think so. You do.
Well, I
The
don't think
current one, yes,
I
right
don't,
now.
I don't think we have.
Okay, then go ahead and open the public hearing on this
Okay,
one.
but I think the question is, do we need to reopen the other one, or do we just wait and see if there are comments
Yeah,
and
that's
then
what I do.
open it?
Right.
Just go ahead and open it for this and just leave it open.
Okay.
And then at the very end, after the last public hearing, close it. If anything comes up regarding the budget, I'll let you know. And
Okay, and then we'll open it at that time. Okay, so, council, I'll entertain a motion to open our public hearing.
Madam Mayor, I motion that we open the public hearing for the remaining 3 items on the docket.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second, so our public hearing is now officially open again. So with that, Mr. Cloward.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan public hearing. The Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, is administered by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. Eligible activities in our community can include various projects such as Open Doors, the activities that they provide to the community, Safe Harbor, infrastructure projects, housing projects, and economic development activities. The activities that we carry out must benefit low and moderate income persons or households. For example, according to the definition of HUD, a moderate income household of 4 is $69,050. Layton City is considered to be by HUD an entitlement community, and this is calculated from an allocation based on the need and the population and housing and other factors. The annual action plan, the one that's coming up for this year, will span beginning July the 1st through June the 30th of next year. And this plan that we develop outlines how the city will allocate its allotment of funds from HUD during the upcoming program year. 2 public hearings are required. We had one earlier this year. And the second one is to gather input from the public concerning the proposed projects that we have in this plan. And in that first hearing, we were able to gather information from the community and some of our public service providers concerning the needs within the city. Some of our past and current activities include the Davis School District Home Construction Program, and we also partner with an organization called Have a Heart. Whenever the high school students are not available to build a home, we have one right now that's nearing completion by Sun Hills Golf Course. We have the Emergency Home Repair Rehab Program, Lantern House, and then as you can see, there's other providers in the community that we depend on. This is just a quick history of past allocations for Layton City. The current program year, 2019-2020, we were given just over $414,000. The upcoming 2020-21 program year, that allotment was reduced by HUD, and at the time they made their calculation, when they decided this is the amount that we needed in Layton City, our economy was doing rather well. Unemployment was low. There were very few people in the community who were relying on public assistance. And so the good news was, hey, we're doing really well. Unfortunately, things have changed, and so that amount, looks pretty, and it is. It's a substantial reduction. I am going to talk about that in part with a new HUD program that has some additional funds for Layton City, just over $217,000, that that we've been told that we can receive for some relief efforts in the community that help with COVID-19 relief activities. So the proposed budget for the upcoming 2021 annual action plan, this just shows a breakdown of where the funding would sit as far as different projects and different public services. We have, with the upcoming annual action plan, we have a HUD cap of 15% that can only go to, you can only use 15% for public service projects such as Open Doors, Safe Harbor, Lantern House, Homeless Shelter. And unfortunately, we had to reduce, we had to make some reductions in all across the board. But we do have, in that far right column, we do have some funds that we're trying to plan to use for the community to provide relief for COVID-19 related projects, and I'll get into that in just a minute. The HUD Community Development Block Grant Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or the CARES Act. Just a quick overview of what that was, or what that is. HUD was granted $5 billion, and the use of the funds are to help prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. Layton City's allocation was just over $217,000, and that money will come in addition to the current annual action plan money and the upcoming money that will start a little bit later this year. The coronavirus money, HUD has temporarily suspended that $15 public service cap. So we will have money available to help above and beyond what we've allocated for Open Doors, Lantern House, and others in the past. HUD has reduced the public comment period down to 5 days. They've suspended in-person public hearing requirements. They let cities like Layton hold virtual meetings. However, the activities, if we use the funds, they have to meet one of 3 HUD requirements or national objectives. The money has to benefit persons of low or moderate incomes. The money has to help eliminate slum or blight, or meet urgent development needs that pose a health or welfare threat to the community. With these additional funds, we're proposing that $10,000 is slotted for the Lantern House Homeless Shelter in Ogden, who would use this money to service Layton City people. This would go to support general operating expenses, staff expenses, and supplies. Open Doors, the $20,000 for that would help with rapid rehousing efforts and motel vouchers for Layton citizens. It would help cover rent, mortgage assistance, supplies, and food supplies for Open Doors. And then for Safe Harbor Domestic Violence Shelter, that amount would be set aside for a new therapist on the staff, also existing therapists, staff programming, and other indirect costs that are incurred by Safe Harbor. And then the remainder, which is just over $132,000, we have some small businesses within Layton City who have been significantly impacted by the coronavirus, and we have a grant that we would like to propose to help these Layton City small businesses with these funds. We recently had a survey conducted in the community businesses, just finding out just some very helpful information before we put this grant plan details down on paper. Just asking how many, on average, how many employees these businesses have, what type of workforce reduction they've experienced, anticipated decreases in revenue, and then we had them identify what industry they're in. With this information, we kind of compared that to the average household size in Layton City, which is just under 4 persons per household. And and that's a little bit hard to see, but what we've done is we've put together an application that tells the business, in order for your business to qualify for this grant, your business has to be in Layton City, and your employees have to be, that will receive this assistance, have to be residents of Layton City. So, for example, a business could receive assistance for up to 5 employees, and of those 5, one of those persons could include the owner if their income is in that low to moderate income range, and that assistance would last for up to 2 weeks. And then applicant, and like I said before, these applicants have to be Layton City businesses and Layton City employees. And we've received around a dozen or so applications so far. We've spread the word through email, social media, and sent a press release to the local paper about that. And I've had several calls, and it's been hard to. It's even been harder for these businesses to hear what they've experienced and how difficult this has been, having to lay people off and the uncertainty. So these funds would go to good use. So just in summary, the recommendation would be, after discussion, is to pass Resolution 2028 for the amended annual action plan. That's what we have been asked to do by HUD with this COVID-19 additional funding. That would be part of the current annual action plan we're in right now, and then to also pass Resolution 2029 for the upcoming annual action plan.
Thank you, Morgan. Council, this is a public hearing, and certainly if we have any questions or discussion, we're welcome to ask at this time.
I got a question for you, Morgan. So that small business grant money won't be available till July 1st, is that correct?
It could be available next week if we can get this if we can get this approved
So
tonight.
it's more immediate than the deadline?
It is, yeah. We could I could have that submitted to HUD tomorrow, and we could have funding hopefully available next week.
Okay.
And Morgan, these businesses, can they have received other monies as well, or is it just for those that have not received any of the other stimulus money?
Yeah, we did put in the application, we asked them to disclose whether or not they are receiving funds from other sources. And so when we get together with a member well, actually with the mayor and our staff, we're going to look at these and give priority to those who have not received other sources of funding, yes.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, Zach, you want
I was,
Oh, Clint?
no.
if the funds are distributed to the successful applicant, is there a way to verify they're being spent on payroll items? And how does that happen?
Right. We will have documentation that we will be very specific on what we'll have to get back from that business so that we can prepare for an upcoming HUD audit on those funds, because they take a close look at that money.
And then I'm guessing that the acceptance of the HUD money, there's some penalties that's fixed to them not following through, that it's not a city liability by accepting them as an applicant. It's the applicant's responsibility by accepting the funds.
Right, yeah. We'll make that very clear to the applicant.
So in that review process, will you guys approve those, or will they have to come back for us to approve, or will you guys just take care of that?
Yeah, we can just take care of that as a committee.
Okay.
So Morgan, just a couple of questions. My question was the same as Councilman Bloxham's as far as the Open Doors, Safe Harbor, and Lantern House, the other group that's receiving money. There's an auditing procedure to make sure that that's what they say they want to use the money for is going to be used.
Right, we
So
have
it's-
we have a grant agreement that we draft that they have to review and sign, and that language is specified in that agreement, that they agree to provide all that documentation.
So that's first question. Second one, actually, thanks for administering this. This is good news kind of stuff. We aren't hearing enough good news.
Yeah.
As far as these three groups go, as you reached out to them and let them know of this opportunity, can you help us understand that need a little more? Is there stats with everybody now kind of sheltered in place, mostly the incidents of domestic violence? We had any stats that they shared with you of the prevalence of that and how this is going to help hopefully alleviate some of that?
Yeah, I have some numbers and emails that I've received from specifically Kristen Floyd from Safe Harbor. They've seen an uptick in domestic violence incidents, unfortunately, with more people spending time at home. That's been a big concern for her and her staff. It's been an added burden to their already stretched resources. And speaking with the director with Lantern House, there's also been an uptick in homelessness. And yeah, they've provided some information to me, and we'll make sure that we have that available for HUD or anyone that wants to look at that, yeah.
A few more for me, Morgan. Open Doors, Safe Harbor, Lantern House have already received funds in the past, right, for functioning. And is there anything that would limit or allow us to just put it all in the small business fund and not give additional service or monies to Open Doors, Safe Harbor, and Lantern House? My reasoning for asking that is it's not a rhetorical question. I would just much rather, if we have money to use, I'd rather have it go into the paycheck of a Layton City employee or a Layton City resident right in their bank account than to pay for a therapist to have a job.
Right, yeah, we're not, the nice thing with the money that will be granted from HUD is they'll let us make those decisions on how to best allocate those funds. And we just found out earlier today from HUD on a teleconference that there might be a second round of funding available for our city. So we may not be just limited to that $217,000.
So there's nothing that in the rules from HUD that would limit us from just doing all from the small business?
No,
This is just a decision that you guys made.
they've removed, for example, that 15% public service cap that's temporarily been suspended. So we can decide how to best, move that around. Yeah.
How many? Sorry, Mayor.
No, you're good. Keep asking.
How many applicants of the 12 do you feel this money will be able to? How many will be accepted if nobody else applies?
Just at a cursory glance, I'd say at least 10. They look like they're within that HUD income limit range, and they've provided all the documentation. We asked them to send a copy of their most recent tax returns so we can verify their income and other information. So from what I've seen so far, it looks like at least 10 or so.
I would feel better just from a policy standpoint if anyone who is eligible and met the criteria that we paid for them as a paycheck instead of paying for I think, can you go back a couple slides to the other three Open Doors, Safe Harbor, Lantern House, just for what the money they were going to be using it for?
Yeah. So, yeah, there you go.
For example, the therapist at Safe Harbor, I think that's great to employ someone, but I'd rather keep someone in their job who lives in Layton. I don't know where this therapist lives. And then on Lantern House, I don't really care for general operating expenses if I can put money into someone in a low-income job here in Layton so that they keep their job. Well, these are just, I'm just saying it out loud, basically what I'd rather have the small business grant money be more because Lantern House, Open Doors, Safe Harbor have already been given CBDG funding prior to this, whereas a small business grant. And last question, Morgan, the survey you sent went out in March, is that right?
It was actually, I
2 weeks
believe,
ago?
either late March or early April, yeah.
So it's been over, my guess is that more people would have answered that their business was affected as of May 7th
Yeah.
than April 7th.
Yeah, we received around 330 or so responses.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm sure, yeah, and your point is well taken. Yeah, after we have the funding, if it looks like we need to move some money around, we can certainly do that. And like I said, it sounds very promising that another round of funding will be coming, so.
And I agree a lot with what Zach had to say, especially when you look at open doors under the supplies category for cleaning supplies, gloves. I understand there's other grants out there that they can apply for. I know a couple businesses that have to be reimbursed for those materials if they have less than 50 employees, which I know Open Doors does. The therapist one, I'm a little mixed on because I do know that the number of cases currently have gone up, but I totally agree with Zach on the HUD money that I think the intent is for the residents of Layton, and I agree. And the employees may or may not work in Layton, and I think right now we've got to worry about our Layton businesses. And so I echo what Zach says on this.
And I would chime in on I guess I tend to agree about the safe harbor. At the same time, open doors, these are families. I guess we can't say you can only take care of Layton families once you give this money to them, but those are people that they've either lost their job and now they can't pay, is what we're looking at here, can't pay the mortgage, need help with rent. It's kind of an emergency situation right now. That's a great place to put that money versus adding to a staff. At the same time, there's a need there as well, and so and each time these three groups have come here, and you mentioned that you offered this to other groups and you didn't have any other applicants for that.
No, we didn't have any other takers, no.
No one, and that's surprising, and so each time they've come over the years, they've asked, well, thank you for doing this. Wish it could be, wish we could get more, and here was their opportunity to ask, and this is where they wanted to put it. So we offered it, they responded. I think we've done that here. I would say if there's a second round, then maybe we look at a different way to distribute it. But
Right, and like I said, with that $217,000, they leave that up to our discretion on how best to allocate those funds. These are just numbers that were, just based on the feedback that we've received so far, we feel fairly confident that this would be best used in these areas.
If I could just add something really quick, Madam Mayor, just as a clarification, all of these funds have to be spent on Layton residents. None of these funds. So when we allocate funding to any CDBG subrecipient, they have to prove to us through a variety of information that they give us that those funds are being spent on Layton residents. So even those who are being served by the homeless shelter are people that are self-identifying as Layton City residents. So I just want to make sure we're happy with whatever you decide to do with this funding, but just want to make sure that that's clear that this money has to be spent on Layton City residents.
And I think Councilman Morris's point on open doors is exactly right. Open doors seems to me to be providing the same benefit that the paycheck assistance from the small business would be providing. I think those two are the same. The other two are the ones that don't strike me as being the same.
Okay. Can I speak yet?
Madam Mayor.
maybe just one more question, just really quick. Victim services, Gary, could that be? That's helping Layton people every day, all day long. Groups that you might go and help with these other groups here.
Yes, our victim services provide for close to 700 victims a year, and it has increased exponentially just over this last couple of months just because of the home situation. And so they're Safe Harbor can't provide enough beds for the victims that we're dealing with right now. And so they really do have a need there for additional funding to be able to provide for that. We do have a new program in Layton that kind of is married to Safe Harbor in some ways, and that is the new housing representative that we have, Kelly Rushton, one of our long-term police officers, has taken that position, and he has been actively providing what Safe Harbor can't provide, and that is Safe Harbor deals with a couple of weeks, a couple of days, a couple of nights. But we can help a little bit more with other things because of that funding, and we're looking at applying for more of that as well because we need more assistance, more help. Just an example, we had a little Spanish couple that he was laid off, and he has his own lawn cutting service. You know, they've been active in it for years and years, and the business went under immediately when this all came about. And so we were able to help a little bit in at least sustaining him over about a month until he could find something new. So those are the types of things. And then you've got the victims. This Safe Harbor deals specifically with victims of domestic violence, and that's what it has picked up 100% in addition to what Open Doors is accepting. We deal specifically, we send all of our folks to Safe Harbor. 75% of Safe Harbor are victims from Layton City. So what you decide to do, you know, with the funding is up to you, but I know there is a need there. I can tell you there's a need there. So.
Very good. Okay, just 2 points of clarification. One is, I know that this is for Layton City residents as far as the employees, but does the owner need to be a Layton resident as well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, because I know that that's kind of critical as well.
Yep.
And then, based upon the applications that you have now, and the existing, and the money that you have projected here that you'd like us to allocate, would you be utilizing up all of that funding for those 10 cases, or could you use more? So that might help in determining.
No, that wouldn't deplete the budget. We'd still have some left.
You'd still have a
Yeah,
reserve? Okay. So that might help you know where you're at now as far as, you know, in this particular round. Now, certainly if there's a second round, then certainly it sounds like, you know, we definitely want to gear towards the businesses. Okay, does anybody else have any questions here before I go to the online? Okay, let me, since this is a public hearing, let me also let me check in with our online specialist to see if we've had any comments coming in via the digital world. 0? Okay. We'll continue to keep it open as suggested earlier. If there's no other comments here or questions on behalf of the council, then I think we can just go ahead and move on to item C.
Can I just make a quick question? And I'm not going to make an objection, I just want to make a public comment. And that is that I object to the fact that the youth council or youth court has had their money deducted, watched over the years it kind of ebb and flow. It's a program that they're also seeing an uptake in the number of kids being referred through to the courts. She's gone through a lot to bring this court online, and to take from her salary kind of bothers me, but that's just my personal opinion.
So just in response to that, in addition to my responses to you earlier today, Don, like I said, you know, the good news for Layton City at the time the allocation from HUD was calculated, things were going very well. The bad news is our budget from HUD was trimmed substantially, and we had to make cuts to all of our public service recipients, unfortunately, and there is that cap for the upcoming program year at 15%. We got to work with $55,000 divided up between all those subrecipients, and if you do look at the reduction for youth court, it wasn't as substantial as the others, but it's still less than $12,000.
And there again, it's a smaller amount, and by substantial, to one individual, it's a lot of money. To an organization, it may not be as much. I mean, we're talking $500 to $1,000 for one individual, which is not a lot of money. But I know in this case, it is. And I just want to voice my public opinion that I wished we could have kept youth court at the rate that they had been at.
If you do have a recommendation on other areas where we could transfer those funds, we'd be happy to hear that.
Well, looking at the other three agencies, they're all getting some additional monies, you know. Taking 500 from each one of them to give, or 300, whatever brings her to that, you know, the
Back to the
youth
base.
court back to that base, I think would be an easy fix. But you guys don't agree with me on that. So this is, I'm just wanting it on public record that this is my personal opinion, that I think that it's a program that 100%, she's a Layton employee, she's been a faithful employee. Youth Court has done wonders in the community, and I'm just kind of disappointed that we can't fudge a little bit and keep that program at the status that it was at, and maybe look at cutting a couple $100 here and there. So that's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you say about Carlene. She's wonderful to work with. She's doing a wonderful job for the community. I've been able to witness the work she does, and like I said, if you have a recommendation on how we can adjust that, we're all ears.
So Morgan, along that line, when you take into account the cuts the other three had, and then the additional money that they're getting, do they come out further ahead in the end than past years? Because if so, then the youth court's the only one that's taken a real, true hit.
I think I would be really cautious, and we respect whatever the council wants to do. I want to make sure that's clear, but I would be really cautious in making decisions based on this emergency funding that we're getting. We're looking at, but before we were aware of this current crisis and the pandemic, we had an allocation that had been given to us by HUD of a certain amount of money. That actually went down from last year, so we had a reduction in that allocation. So we're making decisions based on what that allocation is kind of pre-pandemic, right? We made a recommendation based on that. Because that was reduced, the overall funding that is available is reduced. We have a cap on these public services users of 15%. So we tried to be as equitable as we could in saying that each of these public service users would need to have a reduction in what they had requested. We tried to keep that as minimal as we could, but I would be really careful not to make kind of these budget decisions based on this one-time funding for the actual CDBG allocation that was given to us. The reason for that is next year we could have another set of reductions. If we, at some point we have to say, hey, everybody that's applied for it, we appreciate the work you do. Everybody's doing great work, but to be equitable to those applicants, we need to take a look at what's an equitable reduction to each of those budgets. And it maybe in a certain year, like we say, it may go back up. We've seen that happen in the past, but it could go back down. So like I say, I would be very careful in not. We have some emergency funding that has to go to a specific use, which is this pandemic-related costs, but our allocation was before that, and so I'd be careful in making decisions based on that one-time funding, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Because we
because
don't know-
another year you could be down and not have the
That's right.
COVID-19 stuff at all.
That's right. So we've tried to be as equitable as we can. The reduction to the youth court was smaller percentage-wise than the other public service users. But again, we feel like there does need to be a reduction. That each of those need to see that reduction equitably. That being said, you certainly could choose to fund them at their full request, but it would require that we reduce some of those other subrecipient applicants in their amount. Why that's significant? The other subrecipients also use that funding for salaries for their personnel. So we are talking about, affecting individuals and programs. It's although they are organizations, they're still using that funding for funding salaries for the individuals that work for those programs.
If we're not talking tons of dollars, though, I mean, I kind of don't know where I exactly fit here, but, you know, you're talking $300 out of here and $300 out of here to bring it up to whatever, I don't know, whatever it could be. And where you didn't do anything, I mean, you cut it, and then when we have a round to improve it, they didn't get any. And you've got, you know, $500 out of 55,000. I don't know what that works out in decimals, but it's not very much.
Well, and my comment to you guys earlier is these other three organizations have other donors, and they have professional grant writers. Youth Court has no other source of income, unless the city's willing to make up the difference some other way in a budget. And that's part of my concern as well. I know Lantern House. I know they have other agencies paying into them, they have other cities paying into them, and they have a professional grant writer that goes out and looks for this. So, and again, it's not we're asking for a lot of money, but maybe I'm a little biased. Carlene is a friend, but more than that, I have watched what she has done with Youth Court, and I think that is an investment that we cannot afford to lose.
Ultimately, we'll respect whatever decision you make, and if you want to make those reductions, we just need to know what those reductions would be to bring that up to that 12,000.
Because ultimately, it is up to the council.
So I think the question is, what's the dollar amount we're talking here, the total dollar amount on the annual basis? To bring,
For Carlene?
for Carlene, to bring her back to her baseline, where she was prior to COVID. Or
So,
should I say last year?
Let me go back a few slides and show you what we're proposing compared to what that amount has been in the past. So the current annual action plan, Youth Court is receiving $12,000. We're proposing for the upcoming program year $11,135.
So we're talking $865.
Yeah.
I think we need to find it somewhere.
Okay.
I agree. I think we ought to find it. And I don't care where we find it, even if it's not out of here, but $800.
Well, it has to come out of one of the other public service subgrants because we have a 15% cap from HUD we have to stay within.
Okay.
I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you
Yeah.
both.
I
Come from
mean,
one
you
that's
know.
receiving additional funding.
I hate talking about
Yeah.
$800.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't have to come from one of them. It even can come from your small business grant.
Yeah, it can come
She's
from.
an employee.
Yeah,
It can
that's
come
true.
from there if you want.
Good point.
Well, except it can't come out of the COVID money. It has to come out of the other money that we're granting.
Right,
So,
the COVID money has to go towards COVID-19 relief efforts.
We'll just take it from
So-
whatever we're funding more money of the
yeah, so
COVID money.
Open Doors is at
Yeah.
25,000. Am I reading that correct?
Yeah.
Safe Harbor's at 15.
Uh-huh.
My recommendation is it all comes out of Open Doors.
Okay. That's, I mean, this is just a discussion at this point. I mean, if you guys still want to talk about it, give your opinion on where you think it should come from, then, you know, this is your time right now.
Well, the next time will be for approval on a public hearing, so it should probably be decided now, I would think.
Yeah,
You know, don't we approve this tonight? Yeah,
Mhm.
this is it.
yeah, so that's what I mean. So if you guys want to,
I would feel more comfortable out of not Open Doors, one of the other ones.
Second would be Lantern House.
Okay, I would be okay with that.
anybody else have an opinion here as far as where you'd like to take the $865?
Feel like-
Lantern House is
Why don't
fine
you
with
just
me
pay-
because I think
you
both of the others are very needed.
What was that? I'm sorry.
Lantern House is fine with me because I think Safe Harbor and Open Doors both have very, very much needs.
Okay. Mr. Morris, you have your hand on the mic. Let's hear from
I
you.
just have a question back about Safe Harbor. Could we tie that, instead of a therapist, can that be tied to emergency relief? I mean, could that be tied to nights, to food, to
Now,
back
are
to
you, Are you talking about the COVID-19?
Yes.
Back to the COVID-19.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just back there again.
Yeah.
We're jumping around. I mean, would that help us, to help the council to feel better about that? If it's similar use of the money as open doors, would that help victim services?
Yeah.
Because it's emergency money, not ongoing. I just
Right.
think of it as, okay, how can we help you today?
Okay.
And
That's a good
just
point.
to clarify, I think your answer to the mayor, under what the small business grant is receiving now, you believe that you would be able to take care of everybody who's applied?
So far.
Okay.
Which means then we could actually, if we adopt this
Put it-
tonight, we can get the money out to them hopefully next week.
Well, but along the same line, if you don't end up using that whole 132,000, you can give it to the one you take it away from.
On open doors, the 20,000 derived from something, right? Some kind of model that you said that's why they get 20,000. I guess I'm just curious about the initial funding for Safe Harbor was actually lower than open doors by 10,000, and they get $35,000 more. Is that just because that was a staffing? They wanted to hire someone that they had to pay a wage to?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
So that, I mean, the money that would have been paid for the staffing person could be used for another line item from Safe Harbor, or to open doors for more rental and mortgage payment assistance.
Well, we're not going to, they're going to decide where they're going to put their money. They've said they'll do it in certain areas, but I'm sure they can change that too. You know, as far as, instead of 27 hours, they may say, work 27 hours except for every fifth week, whatever, you know, so it comes out. I mean, there's ways to adjust, you know, their thing.
Do we attach what this is going to be used for?
No. They apply, and that's.
In our subrecipient agreement, we specify what the funds, what
Okay.
programs they'll go to within that public service entity. Yes.
Just like I agree with Councilman Morris that I'd be happy if small business grants are being funded, we can take care of them. I'd rather have that 55,000 to Safe Harbor being used for something other than staffing. Then I'd feel comfortable with it.
And are you saying that's where you want to take your $800, or are you still back to your lantern house?
You can. I think we need to do these one at a time. I think we're getting, the lantern house, or the 55,000 to the shelter and taking that out is the amended budget, correct?
Yeah.
And then the discussion of taking 865 from lantern house to give to youth court is
The 2020-21 annual
2021.
action plan.
So they
Yeah.
are two separate ones. So
Uh-huh.
we can't take from one to do the other.
Right.
Anyway.
Right.
But, so let me just, on my opinion, I agree on the Safe Harbor with on the amended budget, that I would prefer to see it in emergency housing or emergency something more so than staffing. Because again, if we fund something this year, that doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be money to fund an employee down the road. And then I personally, on the current budget for 2021, would like to see the 865 given back to youth court and taken from Lantern House. And those will need to be separate motions, but
Good thing you're wrapping your brain around it.
it's called a calculator on your phone.
Okay, council, have we discussed this one long enough that you're ready to move on to the next public hearing item? I mean, this is still open. We can still have discussion on it. There may be even input from online, but at the same time, we do have one more item to go through on our public hearing, so.
Why not just decide now? Make the motion and vote on it.
Well,
Just like you did there, make that a motion, Dawn.
But if we've left the comments open, is that?
yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Crane will defer to you. I know initially you had advised us to go ahead and leave them all open until we're through, so it allows for more time for public hearing to come in, or for public comment through the social media aspect.
Not really getting any comments through the website. A lot of chatter going on the site, but
Okay.
the official
Probably we don't look good in our masks. Scatters, we don't look good in our masks.
should answer each other's questions.
Okay. Yes?
The 20% cap,
15
15.
for public
so you
services.
lowered it, that's in the original, the amount funded where that says 20%?
Administration and
You're looking at
planning.
the administration
Yeah, I
line.
am, yeah. So that's in line with, we could take money out of any of those, right?
If they're not a public service. If you want to move some money from, let's say, home buyer assistance to historic downtown infrastructure, you could move those monies
Oh, but
around.
you can't move it to public
No,
service?
you can't. You
Oh,
have to
sorry.
stay within that 15% cap.
So what do we need here? A motion or a
Well-
vote? Okay, I make the motion, we just take the amount from Lantern House and give it back to the Layton Community Action Council. What is it, $865? Leave everything else as is.
Well, that's the one motion. That's
Right.
on item C, 2021.
Right.
Okay.
The
Okay.
COVID money, you can leave it the way it is.
However,
Another motion.
that is another motion, and in order to take action on that, we would need to close the public hearing, correct?
Okay,
Okay,
that's part of
so
my
can
motion,
you-
is to close the public hearing and do what I said.
And I will second, as long as we're talking about Resolution 2029.
Yeah.
Did they combine?
No.
No. No, we have not gone on to item C. We're still on item B, on,
No, he kind of combined the two.
The
I think.
amended annual action plan for 2019-2020.
Resolution 2028.
That's what we're on,
Yes.
That's the item we're
Yeah.
on.
2029.
Right. You're on Resolution 2028.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's-
So Teresa,
Yeah, so the first motion needs to be on that amended annual action plan. That would be the COVID CARES money.
correct.
And Zach, if you want to make that motion about moving
So
it.
you want a motion for that, just to leave the COVID CARES Act money as is? That's my motion.
And
Yeah,
that
I wanna
doesn't
change
take
it.
care of what you guys are after.
It's to adopt the amended 2019-2020 annual action plan.
Which includes the COVID money and the
Yes.
amounts that are shown, right?
Yes.
Okay, I don't support
Yeah,
that. so.
and I'm not seconding that.
So what do you want to do?
We had a discussion where we were going to move the money from safe harbor, not for an employment, but to other emergency services. Is that right? Okay,
So
well,
you would, so you want to make an amendment to his motion?
yeah, well, do I need to make an amendment, or do I just make my own motion?
You need to make a motion because the previous motion was.
No one seconded it.
Nobody seconded it.
Okay.
Okay.
So
Make a mo-
I motion that we approve Community Development Block Grant Amended Annual Action Plan, Resolution 2028, with amendment for safe harbor funding to be used for emergency services in lieu of employment.
I'll second
Cover
that.
it. Okay. That, so
Clint.
Clint has seconded it. Okay, so, council, we have a motion and a second on item B of our Community Development Block Grant Amendment, the Annual Action Plan. So with that, I'll take a roll call vote. Councilman Day,
Yes.
Councilman Bloxham,
Aye.
Councilman Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Councilman Morris,
Aye.
Councilman Thomas.
No.
Okay. Chair, we do have a roll call vote there. We have 4 in favor and 1 against. Now, the public hearing is still open at this point. Do we continue to leave it open since we're entertaining online? We could go either. Okay. Okay, for the record, it's still open for online comment. We will now move on to item. We opened all of them at once. Yes. So now we're on to item number C, which Mr. Cloward would present item number C, which is the action plan for fiscal year 20 and 2021. So there's your difference. Go ahead.
And with that one, we will, it's been proposed to take $865 from Lantern House and allot that to Youth Court.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on that? With that, I'll entertain a motion then to adopt item C with the adjustment.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan for fiscal year 2021, Resolution 2029, with the change, or as written, with the change discussed of taking Youth Court from $11,135 back to $12,000, and Lantern House from $4,200 to $3,335.
Second.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Day will second it.
Mr. Dave?
Mr. Day. Day.
That's fine.
Okay, now we have a motion and a second. With that, I'll go ahead and take another roll call vote for item C. And with that, I'll start with Councilman Thomas.
Yep.
Morris.
Aye.
Fitzpatrick.
Yes.
Boxam.
Yes.
Day.
Yes.
Okay, that is unanimous. We will now move on to item D, which, thank you for your patience there,
Thanks,
Mr.
Morgan.
Wilkinson. Thank you, Morgan. We certainly put you through the ringer, but we appreciate your patience there and following through with everything, so thank you. Okay, I'll turn the time over.
Thank you. This last item is an annexation request. This will be two resolutions. One will be approving an annexation agreement. The second would be approving the annexation of this proposed property. This is just almost 3 acres, 2.9 acres of property located where that red star is on the slide on the west part of the city, approximately 3645 west, 100 south. The application came before the council previously to certify the annexation petition. The city has gone through the proper notification procedures by posting the application several times in the paper and giving public notice in the other required ways. This time we haven't received any objections to this potential annexation. The city had a desire as part of the annexation to preserve access for future annexation parcels. This parcel is shown in red, the subject parcel. The property to the west is not part of Layton City, but is within our annexation policy plan to be annexed at some future date. That property owner doesn't wish to annex at this point, but they could in the future. So to make sure we facilitate for orderly development of those two properties, at this time in our annexation agreement, we're requiring easements for future access at 100 and 200 south, choking. That agreement also has provisions for circumstances where the property to the west may choose to develop before the subject property. Subject property, right now, the Robinsons have just requested that we bring that property in to allow them to build a single-family home on the property, approximately this location. They'd have a small street extension to serve their home that they're proposing to build, but no plans for any other subdivision of the property at this time. Again, this is the official annexation plan for the property as submitted by the applicant. A couple of the different development scenarios that we looked at that could happen in the future to develop these two properties. There may be other iterations we haven't talked about as well. These are some options for those development of those properties. Those are outlined in that development agreement and are attached as an exhibit to that to that annexation agreement. So with that, again, we are recommending approval of those two resolutions, one to approve the annexation agreement and one to authorize the annexation of this property I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Okay, council, this is a new topic now regarding the Robinson. Do you have any discussion on that? Or questions?
Chad, the proposed development that you were showing, what would the zoning be on that? Would it be RS?
We'd have to consider that at a future time. That was analyzed using RS zoning, but
Okay.
but the current, that's a good question you asked, though. The annexation request, they're not going to change the zoning from the agricultural
Okay.
zoning. Anytime a property is annexed into the city, it automatically is zoned agricultural. They're not proposing to change that. It'll remain agricultural zoning.
But I was just curious about your illustrations.
Yeah, that was
That's an RS.
analyzed as RS, yep.
Okay.
Okay, council, is there any other questions regarding item D here, the annexation agreement? You two have a question
No.
over there? No? None?
I make a motion that we adopt, I can't read it, 20-35 as a resolution and 20-08 as an ordinance.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved in second that we
So
adopted.
we're still in the public hearing on
Correct.
this.
Yes, but all of them
I
are
move
open.
that we close the public hearing.
No,
No,
we
we
don't
haven't.
want to close it yet. You're
do.
fine the way you
I
presented
want to
it.
close it.
Right, but he wants, we will close all of it. We'll have one last call for public comment on all items. No, because so far we voted individually on every one of these items.
Well, it's time for the last call right now.
So I guess actually, he does bring up a good point. Since this is the last item on the agenda, the last public hearing item, we can make a last call request for any other public comments at this time. So knowing that there's no one in the audience, but we do have some online comments. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Gary Crane.
So my recommendation to you would be to vote on the motion that was just made, and then I will raise the issue that there's one more comment from public comment. It doesn't have to do with this issue. It has to do with the prior issue, and that's the reason we left the public hearing
Item A,
open, so.
you mean?
Previous item.
So the motion
Oh,
was
okay.
made, you
All
need a
right.
second for it? You did.
Have a second.
What a night.
So you have a motion.
Yes, we have a
You
motion.
need a second.
I got it.
You have a second.
Yep.
And so now it requires a vote on the motion for the motion on the two resolutions that Mr. Thomas.
Okay, I don't need to restate that. Do you guys all comprehend it, right? Okay, so we will be taking a roll call vote then on item D, which is the annexation agreement for the Robinsons. Councilman Bloxham, how do you vote on that item?
Aye.
Day,
Yes.
Morris,
Aye.
Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Thomas.
Yes.
There you go. We have
Okay, thank you.
now,
He's whispering to me. That's not fair.
Well, I'll ask, what's the difference between an ordinance and a resolution?
An ordinance typically deals with an issue that is long-term, and a resolution deals with an issue that is short-term. And what this is doing is it's requiring that essentially you approve the annexation and send the materials to the attorney or to the lieutenant governor. Lieutenant governor will then approve the annexation. It's also sent to the county. Am I right, Chad? This is
That's
the
right.
step we're at. And then the lieutenant governor will then send something back to us, and we will, it'll then be annexed, so.
So that's the ordinance.
Yeah, resolutions are, I think, for things like agreements,
No, that's fine.
for,
No,
for
I'm
temporary type
fine. I
things.
just, there was both there, and it was.
Yeah.
then we're
Zone
talking-
change, zone change will be done by ordinance.
Right.
It's changing the law for a property, yeah.
That's a great question.
No, don't say that.
Yeah,
was just,
it really was a good question.
it's okay. I'm sure there's people online that would want to know that anyway.
Yeah, that's a really good one. So we do have, the reason for delaying the hearing is apparent because we get the messages a little bit late. We have one more comment regarding the change that you made regarding Safe Harbor and the therapist. And this is from Haley Cragen. And it says, comments were made as to the validity of providing funding to Safe Harbor with COVID relief funds. A motion was made to change their funding request from a therapist to emergency services. Safe Harbor provides important victim therapy services that are difficult for them to attain elsewhere. Please do not remove their opportunity to hire an additional therapist. And that was from Haley Cragen. So if you wanted to change that, you'd have to reconsider, make a motion to reconsider your previous motion. And the hearing's still open. And, but if you want to leave it the same, you just don't do anything,
Gary-
Other than close the public hearing.
other than close the public hearing.
Okay.
Gary, you're involved a lot with that and the victims and stuff. What's your opinion on it?
Well, my feeling is that they can move funds around. They can move funds from one area to another if they need to. I think the important thing is that they get the money, the funding. And if they want to move funds that is not specifically attributable to a therapist, into that therapy, they probably have the ability to do that.
You mean,
I think the
you mean,
important thing is
Gary, funds they already have that aren't this 55?
funds that are from different
Right.
sources.
So they could take something
From
that they have to
donations.
hire it and then use what we gave them for what we wanted them
Right.
to use it for.
Correct.
It doesn't necessarily preclude them hiring a therapist. It's just can't be with the money that we gave them.
And that's my thought on it,
Okay.
is that they can shift those funds around, but
That's right.
so, as long as they get the money, that's the important thing, so.
Well, I think that's true with everybody here tonight. I think they all need it. Certainly, there's a lot of folks out there that are desperate for any type of funding that they can find. And, I certainly, it saddens me to think that we're in this predicament right now, but certainly, I think this council's being extremely wise in the way that they've discussed all of these items here and figuring out what's the best solution. And, I commend you on that and making sure that, you're being good stewards here. So with that, is there any last call for discussion? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearings.
I'll make a motion, Madam Mayor, that we close the public hearings and adjourn.
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we close our public hearings. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Good job.
I appreciate it, and
Can't see what I-
until we meet again, hopefully, and we can.
Is Stockton's open?